So one of the questions that people ask me most about my farm is,
how much does it cost to run your farm?
And on a daily basis, I'm actually not usually sure of the answer to that question. But last night I was actually up late doing some tax stuff, and so I now have a complete answer for you guys. And I really want to break it all down for you. Good morning, Toby Dog. Good morning, Abby Dog. How are my large white farm dogs doing, huh? How are you guys doing? Yeah? You guys doing okay? According to the mudroom thermometer this morning, it's like -7 degrees here. In fact, it's still so cold I left the barn cats inside, and I probably won't put them outside until the end of this video. But you guys don't care one bit, do you? You've got these soft double coats of fur that make you happy pups outside. Stop it. Hey, sit, stay, stay. Hey, sit, stay, stay. It's good dogs. Sit, no, stay. Okay, come. Sometimes I'll do like a quick little training update with them, and it's like a refresher course, but I feel like I'm playing red light, green light.
Green light. Red light.
And no, not the Squid Game version. The funny thing is, actually, despite Abby's behavioral problems, she's actually much better at training games than Toby Dog is. Now, I suppose the first thing that's worth noting about these numbers is these numbers aren't how much it costs to buy my farm or how much it costs for like all the infrastructure on my farm. I've actually done videos on that topic in the past, which I'll leave a link for somewhere around here. Instead, what this video is about is like, what's my daily expense to just keep all the farm running? Like in venture capital bro terminology, what's my burn rate? Like how much does it cost to keep all of this going? And while I know that number on an annual basis, I actually never really sat down to figure out what it cost on a daily basis. And it was surprisingly a lot higher than I expected. All right, you guys, you ready to go greet our birds? Morning, birds! How's everybody doing in here this morning? So a quick check of the temperature just told me that despite being -7 degrees out there, it's roughly 11 degrees inside here, which is still pretty gosh darn cold. Definitely cold enough to freeze some goose poop. But don't worry, the birds are still gonna wanna go outside. Release the quacking! Come on, everybody, let's go. Yeah, the birds might be a little bit reluctant to come out, but they'll come out as soon as they see me starting to pour the first expense item that I want to talk about, which is feed, and particularly poultry feed. Because to feed all of my ducks, chickens, and geese, it costs roughly $15 a day. So that number will fluctuate depending on the time of the year, but the average price is $15 per day. And just to give you a sense of scope, right now, my flock consists of about 20 geese, 30 ducks, and I think about 40 chickens or so, somewhere like that. So like a little less than 100 birds. Yeah, it's about $15 a day for all the feed that you see them consuming here. I'm actually in the process of working on a plan that might save me some money on bird feed in the future. But I'm not quite ready to talk about that one just yet. Here you guys, speaking of saving money, here's some kitchen scraps. Now that gambling is legalized pretty much everywhere, I think people are gonna start having gambling on animals, and in particular, I think the new sport of chicken rugby is going to become wildly popular. Like the idea of watching chickens battle it out for a stale bread roll, it seems entertaining, and I think like if you had different chickens that you were betting on to see who would end up with the most of it, would anybody watch that? And yes, I'm only joking about that one. I see significant moral and ethical and legal problems with the idea of doing something like that. So please, that idea is just a joke. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the bird yard is becoming more and more treacherous and more of a skating rink. It's actually pretty hilarious to see the ducks go through. Contrary to conventional wisdom, ducks are not very mighty on the ice. I know folks will say that I should try to dump my water elsewhere, but I don't think you are appreciating how, particularly when it freezes, how hard it is to move and dump that water anywhere but here. And honestly, part of my design for how I have my bird yard set up is that the water can go downhill back down to that corner that way, so it actually still drains off okay. In my opinion, what would be much worse is if the water started to pool up and come backwards towards the hoop coop. And so I'm fine with this. The dogs are fine with this. The birds don't love it, but they'll be okay with it. And quite honestly, with spikes like these that I have on my feet, this ice isn't too bad. And it kind of almost makes me like a billy goat. Speaking of goats, good morning, Goaty Otises. So yeah, the newest addition to our farm, who were added back in late summer, we added these 3 weather goats to be the groundskeepers and animal chaos here on our farm. And like, they're not really part of our farm's business at all, but they do cost us money. And so I know folks are wondering, well, how much does it cost to keep these goats? And well, I have an answer for you right here. But oh shoot, the goats are going to steal the food. Hey, you guys, hey. No, don't eat the hay. No, come with me. Wait, come on, guys, come on. Oh, actually, before I do bring them in, I want to show you guys something. This is actually pretty darn funny. As many problems as the poultry have with ice, you have no idea who has even more problems with the ice. Come on. Whoa, easy, don't jump, you're gonna hurt yourself. I know I used the metaphor of a billy goat on ice, but in my experience, goats aren't actually all that good on the ice. Come on, boys, let's go. So actually, let me feed these guys before I talk about how much it costs to feed these guys. Because if I don't, they won't let me hear the end of it. Here you go, have some alfalfa, there you go. And don't worry, I got your hay. Except they don't really care, because the way it works is they always prefer alfalfa over hay. This is our catnip patch, and so I'd love to deposit more goat turds in the catnip patch. I'm pretty sure it's gonna help me grow even more potent catnip come this summer. Abby, are you trying to mess up the goat's hay? Abby, leave it. Leave their hay alone. Come on, Abs. First she's stealing Toby Dog's food, now she's stealing the goat food. Actually, one bit of advice, if anybody has it for me out there, I'd love it. How do you deal with goat poop in the winter? Like in the summer months, I will be rotating them, and so just like the cattle, I won't really do anything, and I'll just let their poop compost and they'll move to a fresh spot. But in their winter yard, I'm kind of struggling with what to do here, because like, it's harder to clean up, and they're not big like, you know, cattle poops, which I can just scoop up with a shovel. And like, trying to sweep them up seems crazy, and there's no way in heck I'm gonna just go and pick up each individual raisinette, because they make a lot of raisinettes. I asked my friend Jess, who lives down in South Carolina, and she has goats, and I asked her what she does in the winter. And because they're a lot warmer than we are here, she doesn't really have a problem, because like the rain will just like compost them pretty quickly, and so it's not that big a deal. But the reality is here, I just have like levels and levels of snow and ice and goat turds that just freeze and probably won't compost until we get to like May or June. I've been trying to do like almost like a deep litter bedding system for them by just piling fresh carbonaceous diaper in the form of straw on top of it. But there's only so much space, and that straw gets pretty expensive pretty quick, as you guys will soon find out in just a moment. And so if you do have any suggestions on how to deal with goat poop in a cold climate, I would really love to hear it. How much does it cost to feed the goats? Well, those alfalfa pellets that you saw me give them, that's roughly $2 a day that I'm spending there. And their hay ends up amounting to, and I just did the math on it, $1.43 per day for what I give them. And then I'll also give them like plants and branches and that sort of thing, which I just call free. And so it's like less than $3.50 a day to feed the goats. So it's not that expensive to have them at all. And so when you add the cost of the poultry feed plus the cost of the alfalfa pellets, it's about $2 a day that I'm spending. But that's not really where all my hay money is going. So this mountain right here, this is where all my hay goes, and it gets spent on these large, fantastic beasts that you see right here. What's up, Joey Ramone? How are you doing, buddy? You wanna lick my finger? You can, it's cool. You see Macho Man up there on the hill. As I was just walking by him, he was actually looking pretty frosty. But that's actually why we have these shaggy cows. And these shaggy cows consume a lot of hay, which is what keeps them warm. I spend about $50 a day on hay, which roughly amounts to one of these hay bales every single day, or about 7 a week. The boys consume probably less than 1. The girls consume a little bit more than 6. So it's like about $52 a day when you include the goats with the cost of hay. I don't feed the same hay to the goats that I do to the cattle, because whereas my bull and my steer will consume roughly 1 of these a week, my little 3 goats, it would probably take them a month, if not more, to consume just 1 of these bales. And that would mean that the hay starts to be not all that good if it stays out in the weather too much. And so what I find is I have like smaller, slightly more expensive square bales that I feed the goats, and then I'll use the tractor to feed these guys the hay. One nice thing about our farm is that we run off of our well water, and so I don't have a water budget that I have to calculate when I think about animal chores. So that's kind of nice. I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of money for the electricity to pump the water, but I'm guessing it's probably pennies on the day. Now, another cost that you have to factor into your daily burn calculation is bedding. Yeah, Abby's started to like climb up onto the double stackings, and she uses it as her Abby perch. But in all seriousness, if you guys want to keep your animals healthy, having plenty of bedding like that is actually really important. I use wood chips, I use straw, I might use waste hay, but it's a variety of substances that I'll use to both help keep the animals warm as well as clean up their poop and like essentially create compost with that. And so what you see Abby perching on right now is today's supply of straw that we're gonna spread around the hoop coop, because inside the hoop coop, you get a lot of bird poop. All right, Abby, are you ready to help me? Take one bale, put it back here. Toby, don't pee on it, please. Please don't pee on it. Toby always wants to pee on the straw. Hang on. I'm gonna help you guys out. All right, Abby, do your best. So now you're probably wondering, how much does it cost every day to put on a circus like this with this sort of bedding? Well, let me tell you. So in terms of bedding, and again, there's a lot of different things I use and a lot of different sources I have for it. It roughly averages out to about $5 a day for all of the varieties of bedding that I'll use over the course of the winter. And I just did a winter number. It's very different. It looks very different than the summer. The summer, it's pretty much just wood shavings for most of the baby birds is like the only actual bedding I'll use. But this time of year, I do spend about $5 a day on bedding. Other numbers that I know folks are gonna wonder about, in terms of electricity for the farm, so lighting, pumping water, fencing, it works out to be about $5 a day. And so in my mind, that's not too bad. Farm maintenance, so repairs on the equipment and such, I actually find that on a given month, it averages to about $10 a day. So like, you know, $300 a month is not crazy to expect in budget for farm maintenance type stuff. You never quite know what comes up, which I'll talk about that in a minute. In terms of general veterinary supplies, so this isn't major medical stuff. This is just the usual things like dewormer for my goats or that sort of thing. As well as for like, you know, dewormer for the cattle and if I need to do that. That works out to be about $3 in general medical like feeds and supplies, medicines, I'll call it. And then about $2 a day in other miscellaneous stuff that comes into play. So, you know, again, another $5 a day item. When I was doing this exercise of trying to figure out how much all this stuff costs, that was one of the things I noticed is just how much it kind of like almost is just like a lot of little $5 increments. But one cost that is not a $5 increment is if I look at my annual property taxes for the farm specifically, that works to $24.66 per day for our farm to like own our farm and pay taxes for being here in Peacham, Vermont in the United States. And so that's, you know, kind of multiple levels of government there. And that is by no means me complaining. It's just me stating a number and a fact. And it actually turns out to be a rather sizable cost bucket as I was doing this exercise. The other thing to note when I mentioned the taxes is we don't have a mortgage. We own our farm outright, so there's no like mortgage payment or rent I have to pay. And so if you're trying to like use numbers like this and base it off of what I'm doing and try to factor it out yourself, number one, I'm gonna warn you that that's a really bad idea because my factors are wildly different than your factors. And even if you're just using it as a ballpark, I would strongly encourage you to sharpen your pencil and really figure out what it is for you. Don't just go off of my numbers because they're going to look drastically different than your numbers. And one of those ways that that happens is I have no mortgage, like none. And so really the only ongoing ownership cost I have for the farm itself comes in the form of the property taxes. Other sort of office-y running the farm type expenses works out to be about $3 per day. And then I do have like a rainy day fund that is $5 a day or, you know, $150 a month. Not for major catastrophes, but I swear there's always like a new water bucket that I need to buy or like, you know, hose attachment breaks or I have like a broken hose. And like, you just gotta like go to Lowe's or go to the feed store to pick one of those things up. And like, yeah, that adds up. And so, you know, like I said, between kind of what I'll call the maintenance and repairs bucket, which is more like taking care of your stuff, like keeping your tractor greased, that sort of thing. That's like the $10 a day one. The who knows, it just pops up, is about $5 a day. And that's actually based on actual numbers. So I looked at my receipts over the course of the year and looked at stuff that was just miscellaneous, unplanned for, uncategorized expenses. And yeah, it worked out to be about $5 a day. And so my grand total turns out that I am spending $127 a day to keep this place running. It's actually a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting it to be lower. Like I knew there were like the big ongoing infrastructure cost type things. But just when I do a cut like this way, it sure does look different than what I was expecting. Actually, I'm just thinking about something, because this is like looking at my numbers from one angle versus like when I did the video about how much money my farm made, I looked at it at another angle. I'm not even sure if these numbers tick and tie, and so I might just have to take a minute while editing this video and give you an answer to that. Okay, so this is Editing Morgan, and I just took a look at my numbers from like last year's how much money did the farm make versus the farm cost thing. And the answer is they don't tick and tie, and the reason for that is this. When I figure out how much money the farm actually made, what I'm typically doing is like allocation of various like types of animals. Like, so like I have geese as like one big round number, but then some of the costs get allocated to raising geese as goslings and selling goose meat. And then some get towards like just having eggs and like selling it for hatching eggs. And so like, it's kind of apples and oranges numbers. And so, I could get really complicated, which I just don't have the time to do right now. But the answer is they don't quite match. They're off by like about 10, 15% for the most part as I looked at all the numbers. Here's how it breaks out like as a pie chart, where it's about 20% in land cost, 40% in hay cost. So those two things right there are my biggest, followed by feed at 13%, farm maintenance and utilities. And then again, like death by 1,000 cuts with like a lot of little things like bedding and rainy day fund and animal care and vets type stuff. And so that's what it looks like that way. I couldn't figure out how to make the chart have both the number and the percentage. And so I just made two charts. And so there's your dollar chart if you're curious. Might have mistaken something, but as I was figuring out some farm expense things for taxes this year, like I realized this, and I swear I am getting a message from somebody at least once a month asking this very question. And so to all those folks who messaged me, and I probably lost your email in the chaos that is my email inbox, there is your answer. So I think one thing that is worth noting, in my calculations, I did not include dog and cat food because usually that comes to me for free from sponsors. So again, my numbers will look very different than your numbers. Of course, my barn cats also look very different than your barn cats, so I guess we're even. If you guys are curious about how much it costs to buy my farm and how much I spent setting this whole place up, a while back I did a video, and so you should check that one out. Or you can check out this one right here, which talks about the history of farmland in America, which you might find kind of interesting and educational and a little bit eye-opening. But thanks for watching, everybody.